Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, then welcome to my channel. Today is just going to be a story time about my labor and delivery, so I hope you guys enjoy and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up / like button if you enjoy this and if you kind of want to see more story time videos. So basically for my labor and delivery, I was due May 17th. That was my predicted due date, but my daughter actually ended up coming March 7th. So basically what had happened, it was pretty much just like a regular night. Me and my boyfriend were sitting on the couch as we always do, just watching a movie. And I just had this sudden urge to use the bathroom. So I'm thinking nothing of it. I get up, go to the bathroom, and I'm peeing. But then as like in the middle of my pee, I'm like, like I feel this gush. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like did my water break? Like what's going on? So I look down in the toilet and all I see is like, I'm sorry if this is TMI, you guys, but all I see is like gushes of like blood. Like, I mean, it's like filling the whole toilet. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, immediately I just start panicking. I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, please don't let me be having a miscarriage. Which I know, like, being that I was so far in my pregnancy, it's unlikely that I was having a miscarriage. But still, you know, you just never know. Like, that's the first thing I feel like that comes to moms' minds when they see blood is, oh my gosh, am I having a miscarriage? So I like run out of the bathroom and I'm like, we need to go to the hospital now. And he's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? I'm like, we need to go now. I'm bleeding. He's like, oh my gosh. So he hurry ups and just throws on some pants, grabs the keys, and we're out, like we're driving. And mind you, I look a hot mess. My hair, I like in the car, I'm taking my hair out of a bonnet because my hair was in a bonnet. I was in my PJs, which I'm still in my PJs. I had no bra on. I didn't even grab a bra. Like I was just like, we need to get to this hospital now. So we're on our way there and I just have this cramping sensation. So I immediately call my doctor and I'm like, I'm having like bleeding. I'm just making sure like this is like not common. Like, am I right to be going to the hospital? She's like, yes, you should be going to the hospital and I'll meet you there. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm panicking. We rush straight into the ER and he basically just pulls me up and drops me off. I like sign in. I'm like, I'm bleeding. I'm 29 weeks pregnant. So they're like, oh my gosh. So they check my blood pressure and ask me how long I've been bleeding for. They get me in a wheelchair, and by the time I'm in the wheelchair, my boyfriend's in because he just got through parking the car, and they're wheeling me up to labor and delivery. They're wheeling me up to labor and delivery, and in the back of my mind, I'm still just praying. I'm like, Lord, please, like, let the baby be okay. And like, as soon as this prayer, like, I like not even halfway through with this prayer, I feel her start kicking. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like I give like a silent prayer in my head because I'm like, obviously if she's kicking, that means she's still alive. So we get up to the labor and delivery and nurses are like rushing in. They get me, well, no, I think it was just like 2 nurses. They like rush me to a bed, to a room, and they're like, okay, they're just asking me questions and stuff, and they're like, okay, we're gonna try to get something to like stop the bleeding, to see if we can stop the bleeding. So the nurses leave, and then they also put me on like they put me on a monitor before they leave just to check to see if the baby still has a heartbeat and stuff, and she does. So when they leave, like I just have another urge to use the bathroom. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to go use the bathroom. And at this point I missed this part, but I had went to the bathroom when we had first got to the ER. Not first, but not too soon after we got to the ER. And it was like very light bleeding. So I was like, well, that should be okay. But I still need to go like up. So I had another urge to use the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom and next thing you know, same thing happens. It's just like gush of blood just coming. And this time it's like more like, again, sorry if this is TMI, but it's like all on my pants, and my pants are like, they're yoga pants. And even though they were like dark blue on the outside, they were white on the inside, and they were like completely red. It's all on my underwear. It's all on the floor. It's all on the toilet. Like, I mean, it's terrible. So I'm like trying to clean the blood up, and I'm like screaming because I'm like in distress. So the lady rushes in there. She's like, don't worry about it. Just go back in the room and sit on the bed. So by this point, it's like perfect timing because my doctor gets there. So she comes in there with an ultrasound machine. She's like looking at the baby, and the baby seems to be fine. So, so everything was good. They had given me medication, and so my bleeding had like, it didn't stop, but it was still back to like that light bleeding. So at this point, let's see, we got to the hospital at like 2:30 in the morning. At this point, it's like 5 in the morning. So basically I had to stay overnight, or what I thought was going to be overnight. So then the next day, I get switched to a different room, and, so I'm still having the light bleeding, but I get switched to a different room. And so different like doctors are coming in, and one of the doctors is like a neonatologist. I think I said that right. Just the doctor for newborns. And he's like, we're going to give you some medication that's going to go for your baby. And it's basically just like steroids, so that if she does decide to come early, then it'll like be there to help with her brain development and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. So they give me that, and they're just talking to me about like what would happen, like if I did need to stay, because basically the plan was if my bleeding had stopped for 48 hours, then I was gonna basically be able to leave. So this is March 4th. This is well, now it's March 5th, because we had got in there. No, it's still March 4th. Yeah, it's still March 4th. Because technically we had got there at 2:30 in the morning, and it's like just earlier that day. So it's March 4th. And so, like I'm updating my family and stuff. So my mom comes up there, my sister comes up there. No, pause. I'm getting ahead of myself. So like, I was just like, oh, I hope the baby doesn't come like now. And they're like, yeah, I hope she like at least like waits a few days. So at this point, I'm like really nervous because I'm only 29 weeks. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like she cannot come now. But the doctor was basically just explaining to me and reassuring that like even if she comes now, like the likelihood of her surviving is pretty much going to be like in the 90 percentile, because she'll be like well over 2 pounds, and usually as long as the baby's over 25 weeks, then they're in that good range of being able to pretty much have like a definite chance of surviving. So 2 days pass by, and at this point it's March 6th. It's March 6th, and my bleeding has stopped. It stopped. So the plan was for me to go home like that next day. No, not the next day, the day after, as long as my bleeding had stopped. So at this point, I'm just like, oh, that was just a little scare. But at this point, like we were asking them like what was the cause of the bleeding, but like, or what they thought the cause of the bleeding was, but they couldn't give us like a definite answer. So it's March 6th and everything's fine. I'm like, oh, that was just like a little hiccup. The baby's fine. Baby's kicking. Baby's happy. I'm talking to her and stuff, like just reassuring her and just like giving her a pep talk, like, don't come out yet, baby. Like, we still have a few more weeks to go. So later that night, it's probably like around 9 o'clock at night, and me and my boyfriend are going to sleep. Cause in the hospital room, they had a pull-out couch. So he stayed with me, like he was staying with me the whole time. And he had to work that next morning, and he has to be to work at like 6 o'clock. So we went to bed at 9. We typically go to bed really early unless it's the weekend. Even the weekend, we still go to bed early unless we're out. So around like 10 o'clock, I would say I start having like pains. And so the monitor that they had hooked me up on, it has like all of my vitals, the baby's vitals, and with my vitals, it shows like my contractions. So like as I'm there in the hospital, I was having contractions, and the nurses were asking me if I was feeling the contractions, because some of them said they were strong. And even though I was feeling them, they weren't bad. And I'm the type of person that takes pain pretty good, pretty well, I should say. So I was like, oh, if that's what contractions are, then this should be a breeze in the park. So fast forward, it's the 6th, it's later that night, and I just start having these like kind of like cramping sensations in my stomach. So at first I'm just thinking it's nothing. I just keep like going to the bathroom to make sure like I'm not bleeding or anything, because at this point I'm pretty much paranoid. And so I'm not bleeding, but I just have this urge to like poop, to make a bowel movement. So I keep like sitting on the toilet. I keep trying to like poop, and I'm not gonna lie, I was straining a little bit because I was like, oh, it just needs to come out. I just thought I was like really backed up. And so probably like around 11, like when I tell you these cramps started to get intense, like, I mean, they're getting intense. Like I'm on the bed and I'm kind of like going side to side. So my doctor had, or my nurse had asked me if I wanted some pain medication, and I'm like, yes. So I had got pain medication, but I couldn't really get anything like that because they didn't want to like harm the baby. So I had got pain medication or something like that, I don't know. I had got the pain medication, and things were like, it seemed like it should only take like 30 minutes to an hour for the pain medication to kick in. And for a little bit it was okay, but then by like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it's like the pain is back. And I mean, this time it's like super duper intense. So the nurse comes back in there. She's like trying to ask me like what she can help me with, this and that. And like I said, I take pain pretty well, and I don't want to be like a burden on people, even though I know that they're there to help me, but I still don't want to feel like I'm being a burden. So I was just like, no, it's fine. But then my cramps just started to get terrible. Like, I mean, I'm in the bed, I'm moving around. I couldn't even lay in the bed. I could barely sit up. I was like stooping over on the floor. The nurse is like, you can't be on the floor, honey. You can't be on the floor. And I'm just like, shut up. Like, you don't know what I'm going through right now. Like, I'm in a lot of pain. And then like, I'm like having my leg up. I'm crossing my legs. She's like, you have to put your legs down, honey. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want her to go. Like, I need to. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I never wanted to go to the hospital. Because from my mom's experience, she has, there's 3 of us. And my brother was over 11 pounds. He was an 11-pound newborn. And so she was in the hospital for over 20, I think she was in there for like 21 hours or something. It was something extreme. And she said that like with her last 2 children, it was just extremely easier to like have the pain, like go through the labor part at home and then go to the hospital last minute. Because at least when you labor at home, you can kind of like, you're in the comfort of your home. You're not like on these monitors. You're not restricted to the bed. You're not restricted to like the room, so it was my biggest thing, is that I wanted to be able to labor at home. And here I am in the hospital, but it's not like it was my fault. But so the only thing that seemed to relieve the pain was sitting on the toilet and making it seem like I had a bowel movement, but just nothing would come out. So then by that morning, it's like 5 o'clock, and my boyfriend asked me like, are you okay? Are you like, do you want me to stay? And I'm like, no, because at this point it's like not that bad. It kind of like lessened a little bit. So he leaves. And of course, as soon as he leaves, I start having the pains again, and I start like starting to like bleed and stuff again. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So then, the nurse calls like doctors, and a bunch of doctors are just like rushing in. They're like monitoring the baby, and they're like, the baby's like really low lying, and the baby's in distress. So we're going to have an emergency C-section. So at that moment, I'm like panicking. I'm like, no, I can't have a C-section. Like, I'm so scared. Like, I hope the baby's okay. Like, what's going on? Like, this is what I'm thinking in my head. So I text my boyfriend. I'm like, come to the hospital now. Having the baby. And then I text my mom the same thing. So my boyfriend texts back first, and he's like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm on my way. And then my mom, she's like trying to call me, because my mom, like when I say stuff like that, she's just frantic. So she tries to call me, and I can't really pick up because there's like a bunch of doctors coming in and out. It's like an anesthesiologist, just like a bunch of doctors just saying like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing during the procedure. This is what I'm going to be doing. Just kind of introducing themselves. So, finally I was able to call my mom back, and I'm like, just come to the hospital right now. She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, ugh. My mom always has to ask a million questions. Just come. I'm about to have the baby. I'm about to have a C-section. She's like, okay, I'm on my way. I'm like, okay. And my mom lives about 45 minutes away from me. So of course I was expecting my boyfriend to be there first, which he was. Actually, no, he wasn't, because he's in the military. So he had to basically, like, he was taking leave, or he was going to take leave. And there's just a lot of stuff that was going on, and with like the system and him trying to like write out of it or something. I don't know. Clock out of it. I don't know. So like by this point, they like pushed me out of the room, and we're going to the OR, to the operating room. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was so scared. I wear contacts and glasses. So I had taken my contacts out of my eyes because I was like, I don't want to see like anything. I don't want to see my blood. I don't want to see my guts. Even though I know they put the screen up, I still just didn't want to see it. So they rushed me out and rushed me to the OR, and they transferred me over to another table. And basically they're still just talking to me about different stuff, about the procedure. And so the anesthesiologist gives me the epidural in my back. And at this point, I'm like I'm sitting there for a little bit, and then they like lay me down, and they're just like talking, and like I feel like they're setting up, but they had already started, because not even like 20 minutes into it, they're like, baby born 9:45. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the baby's already out of me. Like they already cut me open. All my guts are like hanging out. So the neonatologist, or I know I'm butchering this name, but he was like, don't be alarmed if the baby doesn't cry right away. And she wasn't crying, but I was still nervous because I was like, please cry, please cry. Because, you know, that's like the sign that all moms look for, is making sure their baby cries. So probably like 4 minutes later, she starts crying. Probably less than that, but it seemed like it was like 4 or 5 minutes later. It actually seemed like longer than that, but so she starts crying, and I'm like, oh, thank you. So then it sucked because my boyfriend had literally just like missed it. So like after that, they're like, boyfriend's outside. Do you want us to let him in? They're like, yes, go ahead, let him in. So he comes in, he comes over to me. He's holding my hand. He's all like dressed up in his little like outfit. And so at this point, like, I'm like, I've been sitting on this table for a long time. Like, they took the baby out. Like, what's going on? So I keep hearing them say, like, where's that blood bag? Where's that blood bag? Like, I need this, I need that. And so I start having like a mini panic attack. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can feel it, I can feel it, I can feel it. And they're like, you're okay, sweetie, you're okay. And then, like, cause I could kind of feel them like kind of tugging a little bit. And then I was like, oh my gosh, is the epidural wearing off? Like, am I going to be able to feel this? And then my boyfriend's just trying to like rub my face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to throw up. So they give him like a barf bag, and I'm just like, I like throw up. And then I'm just throwing up. And then before you know it, I'm knocked out. When I finally wake up and come to, I'm like opening my eyes, looking around, and I'm still in the hospital, but I'm not in surgery. So I look over, and my mom's like curled up in the corner on one of the chairs. My boyfriend's curled up on the other corner. I'm like, what's going on? So I see like this like breathing tube, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I hooked up to a breathing tube? So I try to say something. I can't say anything because it's hard to you can't talk when you have a breathing tube in you. So I'm like panicking. I'm like, relax. I'm like, I can barely breathe. Am I gonna die? I got this thing down my throat. Like, I'm like stressing myself out. So at this point, my mom and boyfriend are like, oh my gosh, hey, how are you? Like, are you doing okay? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you could see that they like are kind of in distress, but excited. Like, you could see that they had tears in their eyes. So at this point, I'm thinking it's just later that day, but it turns out it's the next day. So basically what had happened is I had lost like so much blood. They had to give me 9 bags of blood. and they couldn't, like, I was bleeding so bad, they couldn't stop my bleeding. I was in surgery for over 7 hours, and they basically just had to give me a cesarean hysterectomy. So basically, they took my uterus out. They left my cervix, my ovaries, and all that, but basically that means that if I wanted to, like, have another baby, I would have to have, like, either a surrogate or adopt or foster or something like that. So yeah, I was like, dang, that's so crazy. My baby is now a day old and it's like a day later. It's so crazy. But so they had eventually came in there, was just checking me. I was doing great, so they took me off the breathing tube and moved me to the back to labor and delivery to like a postpartum room. So yeah, guys, it's just so crazy how things can change in just a snap of a finger. My baby girl is absolutely beautiful. She's healthy, and I'm here and alive. So I'm super duper blessed, even though the circumstances are terrible, and even though it's terrible because this is like my first child, our first child. I'm still so thankful, and I know that everything happens for a reason. So if you guys would like to hear a story time on how I feel about my cesarean hysterectomy, then just give a comment in the section below. And I'm also going to do a video on the baby so you guys can meet her. Alrighty, well, I thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy.